how's it going? Today I'm gonna talk about the techniques I combined to create the Brazilian accent improvisation method, or some of you call Luciano Rua's method. And I'm gonna talk about the journey to find these techniques, a little about my experience, and I'm gonna give some tips of how I think when I study some subjects in music. When we talk about the Brazilian accent improvisation, we are talking about a lot of different subjects to study. You have to combine the repertory, you have to combine improvisation, and when we talk about improvisation, we are talking about the melodic part that is made of scales, arpeggios. We are talking about the rhythmic part, that it's one important thing to give us the language, the Brazilian language, but also returning to the melodic part, the different notes you can choose to express some style. We are talking about perception, the musical understanding of something that's happening. We are also talking about the articulation of the phrasing. We talk about percussion. So it's a world with so many points that we need to understand to form a knowledge, to execute a language with authenticity and not sounding as a caricature of the Brazilian music. Many years ago, people wanted to play Brazilian music and played something very far from Brazilian music. Today, I'm seeing more foreigner people playing better, but sometimes they don't realize some of the values of these songs. So a method to teach the Brazilian music has to have information of many subjects to create in the students understanding in a more global way. And so this process is very complex, but one thing I understood that that when I had the opportunity to talk and see some great musicians studying, I realized that what makes this students and these musicians genius is in the most of times they have an efficiency to do something that for most of us is difficult. And in many cases I realized that sometimes a thing that we think in a complex way, they think simple. Sometimes we try to do some mathematics in our heads, and they are thinking in a very simple way. And one thing I started to do in my life in this process is to make classes, particular classes with these interesting musicians, and ask them how they think, how they study, and you're gonna be surprised with some solutions, because a lot of things that you think you have to give one step after and one more step, they think simple. They sometimes go direct to the point, and I'm always trying to find their thing. And I was talking about their their capacity of being genius, and I believe that this is the simple way of thinking is what makes them like this. Because, for example, think if you have difficulties to memorize a song or to play this song because you are studying in a more difficult way. You are trying to do in a manner that it doesn't work well and you're gonna get more time. So you are working in a song that you take 2 weeks to learn. And this musician is gonna get 2 days to learn one song. In these 2 weeks that you are learning just one song, this musician can have 7 songs in his repertoire. And there are a lot of collateral effects of this amplified experience in this in his or her experience. Why? Because he's not just learning more faster than you. He or she is having more experience. He or she is having more access to new melodies, to new difficulties, to new combinations of harmonies, to new tonalities, and so you are just stopping the first music you are playing. Imagine if you make the things in a way that you amplify your speed to learn, and you can have more experiences in a small period of time. So that's what I discovered about their experience, and I've been trying through this all the years. I give classes. I started giving classes 16 years ago, and I was always when I discovered this, I was always searching for this different ways. And when you talk with them, you're gonna be surprised. For example, I liked very much the song. I like very much the song of the Brazilian pianist called César Camargo Mariano, and he has a very Brazilian piano. He has a very very good accent in play rhythmically. It's very interesting. So I've transcribed some songs of him, and I showed his transcriptions to him, and he told me, "Oh, I don't know how to read music very well," and I thought, "Whoa! But what has he done to get that sound?" Because it was not transcription, but reading about him and talking with him, I realized, for example, his experience of hearing music and trying to play through, sometimes to imitate some artists, just playing. He gained time developing his sound. In many universities of music, you have to here in Brazil, you have to transcribe a lot, and he is transcribed from a lot of people, but he doesn't do these transcriptions. And a lot of things that we think that are important to arrive in some point, sometimes they are not. So I always try to discover this process, and even from people that plays the piano or the percussion or the instruments necessary to create this Brazilian accent. Um, uh, so I've just one another thing that helped me in this process of trying to search a new way to teach music was the readings I've done about neuroscience, learning, the process of learning, and behaviors economics. This literature has interesting clues of how does our brain works, and we can and another thing I have to tell you that is very important. Besides, I was testing some of these techniques with me. I had one very good opportunity. I had access through piano store. I know I have a friend that's called Zé Luis that gave me the opportunity of making some partnership with his piano store, and he gave my telephone to a lot of people interested in having classes. So I became a teacher, a particular teacher. I didn't have a school or some method or some way, some, how can I say, I was not stuck on a method of another person. I had the opportunity through the years to develop my own way of learning. And so I tested a lot. I tested with me, I tested on the students, and I discovered a lot of things in common between these students. I discovered some methods of getting the efficiency of learning music that are so much more are much more faster than the common that I found on the schools. So this gave me some opportunity to know very interesting people because I was how can I say, people get my name and I have access to interesting people of interesting different areas of music that I knew because I was a little known, well known because of my different way of teaching music. So so this is a different experience for, because people sometimes want to teach in a different way, but they aren't they don't have the permission of the conservatory. And I created when I started classes of 2 hours, and in these classes I could discover a lot, and even how to maintain the interest of a student. Some people were scared about my classes of 2 hours, but they, at the end of the class, they told me that wow, the time passes too quick. I didn't realize the time passing, and so this experience changed my way of thinking and created my difference of teaching. Let's talk about the first book. I'm gonna talk the first book that was an influence to me. It's a book that's not of talking about the methods of teaching music. That was one book of how to pass in tests. And here in Brazil, we have to work in the public system. You have to study very hard, and they have some very hard tests that people study for years to have these jobs. these jobs often are very stable, and they people can't be fired of these jobs, so they study very hard. And there was one book that started my difference in the way of studying. That was how to study. That was this book that has had this accent. This I'm sorry. Sometimes I lose my words. This book was talking about of techniques, the different techniques that neuroscience had discovered to study for these difficult tests. And one thing I started to use, I had one period that I was unmotivated, that I talked to study just 15 minutes. And this is unbelievable, because many people were gonna think that's no, it's not the easy. It's not a sufficient time to study music, and I was unmotivated. And in the book was written that we could do sessions of 15 minutes and stop when the time is over, because it will create it will use the maximum tempo of concentration we can have. And I started this process in that period. I'm motivated just doing 15 minutes, and a few days later I was doing some sessions of 15 minutes, and when the time was over I stopped that session and didn't I had to respect that tempo. And it was very interesting because it created a sensation of hungriness to continue the studying. And before that, before I was trying to study the whole day, I had time to study the whole day, but I was not studying. So this method helped me a lot to have results during the different days and realize them happening. So this limitation of tempo can be very interesting in your beginning, and can be very interesting for some process that are very difficult to you, because they will control your tempo. You're gonna have problems. For example, there is some subjects in music that you're gonna have the will to don't stopping. You're gonna waste all your time just, for example, studying the improvisation in some chord, for example. But at the end of this study, you're gonna lose the opportunity to study all another subjects, because you waste your time or you waste your energy also. So this 15-minute process to divide your studies, it's very important for the moment you need to study a lot of subjects, like in the Brazilian accent improvisation. And another thing I've started to realize that I didn't realize before, it's the improvement through the days. When I studied before I tried this method, I thought the results for the next week, for the next month, it wasn't the things weren't clear to me. But when I start to do this, I see the results day by day. And when I started to apply in my students this, when they respected because it's very difficult to people respect this method. They want to study more and they don't stop. But when I told the students a lot of times respect, and they could show me the results, and I could make a debriefing. I could evaluate their improvement and if they were studying right. Because sometimes you're trying something but you are not doing the necessary thing to get that goal. So I was more capable of understanding their problems, and so I create more capability of understanding what was going wrong in their way of studying. So this it was one important thing. Talking about more techniques I use in my method of studying, I discovered the spacing. It has something with this 15 minutes, but I was reading some books like forgot the name now. I remind How We Learn. This book told me this process of spacing when we are working at and I made one course also talking about the spacing, and I started to do a lot of experiments with the spacing, and I discovered some interesting results during my classes and my study. That was when your mind gets confused, when you don't know what you are doing, you can change the subject. I think I thought sometimes that when I was lost, I had to continue and force myself. Other times of my life, I'm tired. I have to stop studying. I tried a lot, but when I discovered spacing, if you have energy to continue studying, it's just change the subject, and this subject can be inside this 15 minutes. For example, you are studying 15 minutes of a piece, and you are having trouble with the first measures, the three first measures. You are trying to repeat and understand, but you are committing a lot of mistakes. And you try again, you are having more mistakes, and it's difficult. What I do, I change I'm gonna let me study the A section, and I study a little of the A section. Can be more easier, and if when it starts to get more harder, I return to that first part. The most of the times you're gonna realize that it's much more easier. Your head is gonna be more clear to understand that subject. And in this course and that I watched, I forgot the name of the course, but it's about a process of learning also. It told us that our brain, when it's focused on some subject, the brain is trying to use the part it thinks it's the most capable of resolving that problem. But when you stop trying to resolve that problem and goes to another, that problem continues walking through your mind to search any another part to be processed. It's something like that. And when you return to the problem, it's so much easier. You're gain time. You are gain the time and how can I say it's not will, but you're gain energy that you would lose, because when you are doing something harder and repeat harder, you're losing energy for the next things. We have limited willpower, so I in my studies, in my methods of teaching, I do all I can to not waste energy, to not waste my will of studying also, because sometimes we study something that we lose the will in the next day to continue. So the energy I try to save the more I can, and of my students also I do with them. What else? So I was talking about this way of the spacing inside the 15-minute study that can save a lot of energy. And when you stop that 15 minutes, you're gonna have another thing that I've worked on I've learned in the behavior economics. That is the Zeitgeist. I forgot the name. If you want to see, I'm gonna write for you. Zeitgeist effect. It's a name like that. That when you don't finish some task, your brain is gonna continue working on it, and so you return to the brain thinks it's not an unfinished task, and it's gonna be working on that, and your brain is gonna be more prepared to resolve that problem. So it's a combination of these techniques. Another thing that I use that it's very useful in my way of teaching and learning for myself. It's the concept of that I've learned on the book Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman has the concept of the brain using different methods or ways to act in the different situations. The system one, that is our quick reactions. When sometimes is, for example, is driving a car and it's making in an automatic way. It's not the person can be thinking in another thing. It can be talking during that moment, and it's during this. It's using this person is using the first system, and the second system is to do more complex operations, more complex tasks, saying better. And when we are trying to put, for example, when we are trying to park the car in a difficult space, sometimes we turn off the sound, we stop talking with the person. We are the brain is using another different process, and I started to realize this process applied to the different musical situations when we are using the system 2 and where we are using the system 1. And I realized the situations that people are using the system 2, and in the system 2 is very interesting because it spends a lot of energy, and if you use a lot of repeated turns the system 2, it's gonna happen things that you don't want in your study. For example, you're gonna start sometime getting a lot of mistakes and being angry, beating the piano if you play the piano, or you're gonna realize that your emotions are being are in movement when it's not in movement, but your emotions are not stable when you work a lot with the system 2. Um, so I started to realize like I told you, I started to realize the different signs that people does when they are using the system 2. They sometimes say or they start to be angry when they start to mistake. And I started to create some techniques to preserve the use of this. And the system 2 also has something with the memory also that I discovered in my class and during my studies. If you use you are learning some piece and you use the system 2 to learn some part, and when I say you use the system 2, it's not a natural. You are thinking note by note. You are having difficulties, and after that, it's heavy for you. That knowledge. You go to the next step. And that step is also difficult. What's gonna happen when you return to the first? It's like you didn't do nothing before. It's like you've lost that information. It's happened also when people are trying to memorize some lists of, for example, of rhythmic patterns, of different stuff, of list of chords or a sequence of chords. When you pass through a place, when you use the system 2, your memory is weaker in that part, so it needs more repetition. If you did that part, difficult part, and didn't return to do more times to strengthen your memory, you're gonna lose that information. That's why people, when trying to memorize some list, just memorize the 3 first topics. And I discovered all this, and I create exercises using this thought to people learn chords, to learn to learn music by heart, and the simple condition, I think, it's to work the maximum you can in the way that the brain works. If we are trying to ride this machine in the wrong way, it's like, for example, you are trying to drive your car in the first march, for example. You don't change and you want to run. There are some process in your brain that when we use in the correct way, they will gonna give us much more effortless the result. Another influence of my method is also a book of Dan Ariely that's called Predictably Irrational. I think the title in English is that. I've read in Portuguese. In this book, Dan Ariely told us a very interesting thing about intuitive acting. Most of the time when we are using the system 1, we are not thinking about our ways of doing things. And in music, there is a lot of stuff that's counterintuitive, that you have to study in a way that is far from what most people is gonna think, that process. And Dan Ariely in that book told how people we're gonna try to force all the stuff to do in the more intuitive way. So I realized that to my students, I have to teach them many times the method of doing things. The method is very important because I think it's more important than the content. Because when they do the way they think we're gonna get results, they in many conditions they are doing a wrong way. They are losing time. They are doing in the more expensive through the mind way of doing. So this book taught me how to understand the mind, how the mind is gonna force the intuitive in the intuitive thinking, and how I would do to take my students and make them study in the better way. So I combined this and much more things I've read, I've tested, and the difference, there are a lot of interesting concepts, but one thing I think it's interesting about my experience, it's what was the opportunity to test in different persons and see what can be universal. Some people like to talk that each person has its own way of learning, and yes, I agree. But one thing that it's interesting, that all of us have the same machine, and this machine is the brain, and it has a way of working. And even you do the method with your own taste, with your own manner. If you respect the way the brain works, you're gonna have much more result. So I think this is one of some of the pillars of my way of thinking. You're gonna see in my lives me applying this method when I'm trying to memorize some song, me using this method when I'm trying to learn some new pattern to my hand, and it's gonna happen. It's gonna work for all the instruments. I've given classes for people of different instruments, and they see the same results. So I recommend you to watch my classes, to do your questions. If you are trying to apply some of these methods, write for me and say what are your difficulties. Through my life, I've joined a lot of details to doing these studies in the more effective way, and it will be a pleasure to teach a little of them, and to see your results playing Brazilian music and when having a good sound and joining experience and changing experience with people all over the world. All right, I hope you have taken some good ideas of this live, and every day I'm here talking about all the different things involved in the process of learning Brazilian music. I hope you have enjoyed. Thanks, muito obrigado, and see you tomorrow for more quick tips and lives. I'm Luciano Ruas, and this is the Brazilian Accent Improvisation channel. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.